Hey, hey, add it up till we got to the sum. Stayed in the rhythm, now we on the drum. Nova mentality, you see how we coming. Real talk on it, we keep it 100 dreams. Money can't buy it, that's all that we wanted. Wait, now we see what we needed. Putting that work till this mission completed. We feeling blessed, thought we was depleted. Real life winners, we can't be defeated. Stay by our side like we on the drum line. Wait, know that things gon' be hard sometimes. It's a new day, check the forecast. Wait, perfect day for the drum podcast.
So thank you everybody for tuning back into the Drum Podcast with Novateur Agency and Marcus Brand Projects. I have BP and Cahlen with me this week. I'm Bri Hudson, and we have a special guest, and we'll introduce him in just a second. We'll do a recap. So last week we talked about things that were not on our resume. So if you haven't checked out that episode, go ahead and check that episode out. Our art director Strauss also wrote a companion blog about things that are not on his resume. And you can find both of those on our website at novateureagency.com. And our special guest this week is Chioke McCrae, a brilliant strategist and true champion of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Chioke is a strategist with 10 years of advertising and entrepreneurial experience, and his curiosity sparked his passion for a career in advertising as a kid, and that curiosity never left. He currently works at Leo Burnett Detroit, working on Buick GMC and the new Hummer EV business. So welcome, Chioke. Thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate your time. So you've been in a few Novateur meetings, so you know that we start our meetings with a check-in. I'll start. I'm feeling really good today. It's a Monday, and I'm feeling great. BP?
I'm feeling blessed. How you feeling, Cahlen?
So that's a blessing in itself on a Monday. I'm feeling really excited. Yeah, I'm feeling excited to be here with y'all and Chioke today. Like, it's kind of like our first time we were actually get to have a one-on-one breakdown of, you know, who you are and just, you know, what you're about. So I'm excited to learn from you, man.
I'm glad. I would say I'm feeling excited. Like I'm like seeing all this come full circle. I'm like literally working on this for like the last year. It's like finally here. It's rolling. It's rocking and rolling. Getting to see the faces. I don't even like saying the future. The faces of the now. As you guys and women are like building what you're doing and growing your career. So I'm excited.
That's awesome. We're excited too. So again, thank you for being here. I wanted to break our conversation into two segments. So yes, we want to talk about D&I, but also want to take the opportunity to use our platform to talk about strategy and strategy work. Just for us and then anyone else who might be listening, wanted to kind of get in, kind of break into the industry. So your bio talks about your early love of advertising. When did you fall in love with advertising, and what made you fall in love with it?
So my mom would say when I was probably 4 or 5, I used to sit in front of the TV, watch Wendy's commercials, McDonald's commercials, but like Wendy's in particular. And she said me and my sisters and my dad, we would go to the movies, and sometimes we would get pizza, but other times they would go to Wendy's. And what they ended up noticing was that I would never eat the food at Wendy's. Like I would look at it, look around, but like I had no interest in what they were offering. Like I wanted a Happy Meal from McDonald's or pizza or something. So my mom said her and my dad were perplexed, and they just constantly kept noticing it. And my mom one day realized I would just run to the TV anytime the Wendy's commercials would come on, but other commercials too, but like the Wendy's one in particular because I wouldn't eat the food. And she realized that I was excited about what was happening on TV. So it's like so from like today and Michael Jordan and so forth, seeing them, and I've always love getting some sort of emotion from people, like making them happy, making them cry. So it's like I'm not trying to make you cry, but it's like I love seeing emotion come from people, like any form of emotion, raw emotion. And I think advertising really does that, like in its truest form. Like it pulls out the emotion from you. You're laughing, you're sad, you see an ad that makes you want to just go lay down and go to sleep. Like it may absolutely bring out all your fears. I know this feeling. So for me, I would say it was pretty early on. Like I'm doing what I knew I would be doing when I was in the 9th grade, the 12th grade, and in college. Like I've had pit stops on this journey to get here, but it's not like I didn't fall into advertising. Like if I was doing something else, I would be shocked, but I knew I would be doing advertising or marketing At the time, I remember I'm not sure if I knew the difference between like the client side and the agency side. But like once I figured it out, I wanted the advertising side because I didn't want to have to wear a suit and tie to work every day. And even though that isn't, clients don't really do that now, but it's like that was in my mind. It's like I saw corporate America on the news. I saw people in ties and dress shoes every day. I was like, nope, not doing that. I want to have those mornings where I'm tired and I just want to hop out of bed, wash my face, maybe take a shower, throw on my clothes, put on deodorant, drive to work in my shorts and t-shirt, and no one is questioning me. Like I knew I couldn't do that on the client side, but I knew I could get away with that on the advertising side.
So did you always work on the agency side?
Yeah, so I've been on the agency side my entire career outside of like doing my own entrepreneurship journey.
Okay, can you tell us about your entrepreneurship journey?
So in 2014, I was working on Forex advertising and I left their agency, which is GTB now, it's like BMYML now. But before 2014, me and my college friends had always like helped each other out from like a freelance standpoint. So like my one friend would be doing design work, my other friend would be doing tech work. They would need either strategy or social strategy, or I would need tech. Like so, it's like we were always helping each other out. So it's like, why don't we form a business on our own and just try it out? So I ended up doing that. So it's like went full time in 2014, did that all the way up to 2019, worked with startups, the food industry, like culture stuff. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, but it was also painful. But it's like I learned a lot from it. So it's like being in meetings with senior leaders, I feel very comfortable doing that. Like jokingly, like sometimes I feel more comfortable in meetings with senior leaders than my own team because I'm just so used to pitching to people at the senior level. So it's like, whereas like I was pitching for projects that would say, let's say $250 to $500,000 projects. And a lot of times it was people that own like $20 million businesses. Sometimes it were for larger businesses, but they had like projects that size. So it's like we had the opportunity to pitch for this stuff. And a lot of times I was the one leading the pitch, presenting, or kicking off like the initial sale. So it's like I got comfortable being in a room with senior level people and understanding their wants and needs that I was able to bring it back to this job. So I think about like the Marcus Graham project. Like when I was initially presenting this to my senior level client, I felt comfortable. It's like I know what the program is about. I know the pros in it. I know what they may see as the cons in it. Like I can sell this in and I can answer any question that they're going to ask me. And I've never felt uncomfortable not having an answer. It's like, all right, I don't have an answer. I can get this back to you quickly. The issue that I would call it issue, what we end up running into is that running your own business when you are using your own capital gets tough. Um, and it becomes mentally draining. And I think for us, like we always had like this number in mind. It's like if we don't get to a certain number in X amount of years, we're going to move on. We end up getting to that number, but we were just burnt out from running the business. It's like, you know what, let's go try something else. Maybe in the future we'll do something again. But it's like I left that with some, it's like these are some of my good friends in college, and they're still some of my really good friends. Like one of the guys is literally like my best friend. So it's like being able to develop much deeper relationships with them. Like I remember, like I went through like my dad passed when pretty much when we first started the business. So it's like being able to bond on levels that we were forced to bond on levels. So it's like the being able to challenge friends, being able to be critical of friends, is something that I truly love about it and learn from it. Where it's like I feel comfortable in most situations. Sure, I still have my days where there may be situations that make me nervous, but it's like I still know like on the other side of that coin, it's like I'm going to survive. It's like I may not just completely power through it, but I know I'm going to eventually get to the other side. And even if the other side isn't all right, I will figure it out. Because I was like, I had to figure out when I had to figure out how to pay my car note, how to pay my rent, how to like I helped raise my nephew. So like how to help buy him shoes and pay cell phone bills. It's like, hey, if I don't get this piece of work, or if my client doesn't pay on time, I'm going to be emailing my client left and right because I won't have a phone to call them on. So it's like I learned a lot from it. I won't say I would tell people to do entrepreneurship, but I would say if you do choose to go that route, you set yourself up for a lot of success. I say, like, when you come back to corporate America. So it's like coming back to corporate America in 2020, I felt, even though I had been away from a number of years, like I felt pretty comfortable coming back to it because I just learned so much. What I had to do is like the hiring and firing people, figuring out finance. So it's like paying people, looking for part-time, full-time employees, hiring interns. So it's like pretty much doing everything that these larger companies have different departments to do. We were a company between 4 and 9 people our entire time. So it's like growing the company, downsizing the company. I would say like I learned quite a bit from it. Like I said, there were ups and downs of it, but like I would not do it again. Like I loved it. And I just learned so much from it.
So how did you manage the stress that came along with all that? Because everything you just said, like, you know, you made it through, but that can be a lot on like the mental and during that. So how did you cope?
So there's a few things. One, I pray all the time. That was one big component for me. My mom, I like, so it's like both of my parents have passed, but it's like my mom, I would talk to her every Friday, like 6 o'clock, like every single Friday about anything, any topic, call her up afterward. And so also it's like I have dreams of being a billionaire. Like I want to own an NFL team. Like I know people look down on billionaires. Well, I was like, well, you're going to have to look down on me because I don't I would say it was also like being able to, I had like, I could take days off. So it's like, we would always try just to work 4 days out the week. Some days I would work 5, some days I worked all 7 days. It's like over time, I learned how to manage my time. And I would think like really when we got towards the end, I think it was like being able to make that decision is like, you know what, we're going to step away from this. Like we from a financial standpoint, we reached the number that we wanted to reach, but this isn't worth my health. Like I know that I can do this again in the future. And I've learned so much from it. So I would say it's like talking to my mom all the time, praying, and like learning how to manage my time. Like I guess I was up for the challenge because I look at like even in my current job, like it's still like it's just different levels of that mental drain that you deal with. So I always looked at it from a standpoint that it doesn't matter what you're doing in life, you're always gonna have some sort of mental fatigue, and you just have to figure out how to deal with it in whatever situation, environment that you're in. Some it's much easier to do, like when you're not worrying about where your money's coming from. So it's like for me, it was like I always try to deal with like the reality of the situation and not the reality that I'm hoping for. It's like I may be hoping for something, but I'm going to deal with the reality of the situation that I'm in.
That's gold, professionally, personally, everywhere. Dealing with the reality of the situation you're actually in, that's really powerful. So I wanted to ask you about when you started as an entrepreneur. You know, we talked about like those skills being really good in where you are now and your comfortability in rooms with executives or your rooms with decision makers. But when you started, were you comfortable? Did you practice anything specific to get comfortable, or is it just a matter of fail fast, fail hard, and like get back up?
I'm trying to think of some of the things that I did. So it's like one, when we were presenting, I always wanted to present. So it's like I've always felt comfortable presenting. So like when I was in college, I remember like I ran my student ad group. So I remember there was like, so it was like the American Advertising Federation, and I remember like our competitors, like the American Marketing Association. And I remember being in college, going to the class, like the American Marketing Association had like 200 members. my group at the time had like 10 members. So it was like literally the bare minimum to be counted as an official college chapter. And for me, it was the challenge. I remember like, so it's like between my first semester, like being VP and end up becoming our president, like the very next semester, because our president had to step away because of family issues. I remember the challenge of their 200 members. I either want them to be in both organizations or I want to take all of their members. And it got to a point that I ended up taking like 150 of their members. And I remember like having their presidents absolutely mad at me, upset at me. Like bringing it back to the story for me, it was a challenge. So it's like, okay, so it's like when I was running the business, like the challenge is win these people over. If we win them over, we can travel more. We will have more free time. I can buy my nephew nicer items. So I would say it was like, there were definitely days I remember being in meetings where I'm standing up there presenting, where it's like, I don't think I'm nervous, but I'm nervous. I'm like dripping. And I was like, you know what? I don't really care. Like I'm going to, it was like, I'm going to act like I don't know that my shirt is wet. I'm just going to keep talking. Like I'm going to stand right in front of them and talk to me. And then I'm going to walk out of here, go change my shirt. I may not get the piece of the business because they see that I'm nervous, but it's like in my mind, it's like, I don't care. But then it just got to a point where it's like, I can come here and sell you anything. Like, if you tell me what you need, I feel comfortable because I know I'm going to do my research that I can come in here and just sell. And it was also like with our team, I felt like I was probably the best person from like when I look at the characteristics, like the makeup of our company. It's like I had my designer, who was an amazing designer. We had our technical guy, who's just one of the brightest people I know. But it's like I felt like I was always able to like to truly read the room, where I was able to see if a client was not feeling what we were presenting and quickly change it up to see like, okay, like what do you want to hear from us? So for me, it was more like the challenge. Like I felt like that is how I got over the hump. Like I've always honestly I've always jumped at opportunities to get in front of people. Like I was sure that like early on when I was a kid, I had reading issues. And I remember I would purposely miss class because like the day that I knew we were reading, I would stay home. My stomach hurt, like whatever it took. Like I was not going to class. And then I remember finally going to the doctor. I don't remember what they said was wrong, but like I would always, and like it wasn't that I didn't understand the words. Like I would see a book, or if we're reading a book, I would see the words and I would create my own story. So it's like if it said Matt is running to the store to buy a new pair of gym shoes, I would say Matt is driving to the store to buy a new pair of Air Jordans. Like I would just add my own stuff. I remember going to the doctor, and the doctor had my mom put me in some just like this reading class, and that really helped me to stop doing that. So, but like the other part of it was like you can't avoid your fears because you're not going to grow. So for me, it was like, no, yeah, I can't avoid my fears. Like I've been doing it for quite a long time. I just tell my mom my stomach hurt. But eventually it got to the point that I was like, okay, I can't avoid my fears. Whatever happens, happens. And there were definitely some tough days where like kids would laugh at me. But then I got over it. Was like, I remember thinking to myself, I'm the brightest person in this room anyway. I want to be more successful than all of you in the future. But then I think it's like as time went on, I just got more comfortable presenting. Like I remember in college, I had this communications course, and I procrastinated big time. And I remember like my plan was to get up in the morning, write my presentation, and present it. My computer died. So it's like, oh my God. I had my outline, but it's like I didn't have my paper what I was going to do. So I was like, I get to class, print out my outline, and I had no time now. So like I remember we had to stand in front of the room like to get 100% on the presentation. We had to stand up there for 5 minutes. I'm standing up there just babbling on. Like I don't remember. Like it doesn't even matter what I'm saying. I'm just talking like I'm talking to you right here, just saying whatever. Pretty much just looking at the clock, knowing that all I need to do is get to 5 minutes, and then I went and sat down after I reached 5 minutes. So like the very next week, I did my paper, my presentation like in 3 days. Like I was ready to go, no procrastination. So I come up there the next week. I say, hey, I know last week was pain for all of you. It was painful for me also. I procrastinated. I'm definitely not procrastinating this week. And the next week was for 10 minutes. And I just killed it. I remember like everyone laughing when I was saying like how painful it was. I like, I know you saw it. I was just up here babbling, constantly looking at the clock. So it's like things like that I felt like have prepared me to like just being comfortable in any environment. Cause it's like, hey, all I got to do is get to 5 minutes for this 100. Like, big picture is what matters to me. I don't care how embarrassing this is. So then, like from a business standpoint, it was big picture. I need this. I need to close this deal. I want to bring in new revenue for our business. What are the things that I can do? And it's just like, hey, I don't really have any other option. I could choose to present, hope we win the business, build a relationship, or I can go work at McDonald's and try and figure out a way to pay my phone bill or something like that. Where it was a mindset of it's more like just I have no other options.
Okay, that's awesome. So you can talk about challenge. The word challenge comes up a lot, which is like one of our core pillars. So that's awesome that keeps coming up in your conversation. But I have two questions. It's a double question. So strategists, the first thing y'all all say is that curiosity is the number one thing about being a strategist. It's why you're a strategist, because you're curious. So what are you curious about, and what challenge are you trying to win these days?
I'm a nosy person. I am curious about everything. Like it does not matter. Like if I'm engaging with you, I'm trying to learn everything there is about you. Either from the standpoint of I'm developing a friendship. So I think like my friendships, like I know everything about people. Right? If you tell me about it, I store it in my mind. I lock it there, and I remember it. So it's like I've just always just been intrigued by the way the world operates, for better or for worse. So I think for me it was just like this. I was just like, as a kid, like my dad was an engineer, electrical engineer. I would chop batteries in half just to see what was on the inside of them. Um, I remember doing all sorts of things that honestly probably put my life at risk as a kid. And as I grew as an adult, it's like it's almost like two folks. It's like I have this great faith that God is not going to let anything bad happen to me. So like it allows me to like go to places where it's like, let's say walking in the woods at night. I was like, well, they say, well, like I hear something. My mom used to say to me, like there's a saying that only 1 in 1 million will get selected to whatever say. So it's like applying to Marcus Graham Project, applying to Leo Burnett. My mom would always say, well, one has to be selected. Why not you? And that has been my mindset forever. So it's like from a curiosity standpoint, I just want to know anything that I can possibly know. Like it doesn't like there's definitely topics that absolutely bore me. But it's like when it comes to people, I'm people just intrigue me so much that I always want to learn more about them as an individual, as a group. And I feel like that is where my curiosity comes from. It's like I've just always just been intrigued by why people do the things that they do. Like when I see people do things that put them in a position to fail, where it's like it appears obvious to me, but obviously it's not obvious to them. That's like, oh, what you're doing like literally makes zero sense. I'm going to kind of enjoy this train wreck, but I may step in and advise you, but you got to think about like some people don't want your help. So it's like that is something I've had to learn over the years, that some people if they know or don't know what they're doing is going to harm them, some people absolutely do not want your help. It's like, yeah, I didn't really ask for your help. So it's like I've learned that it's like my curiosity allows me to see people doing things that can help them and hurt them. But it's like sometimes I'm just curious, like just to see the outcome. It's like this is really going to be intriguing. How everything about growing up, like I remember arguments between my parents where I think about like when adults argue, and generally times you can say that one thing that is going to push the person over, and you probably have there's no reason for you to even say it, but you're trying to win. And for me, I remember seeing that with my parents when they argue, where it's like, okay, my dad said that's like there's really no reason for you to say that. Or my mom said this, or it's like, or my mom refused to say something that she knew within the argument, and vice versa. And it's like, what part of your ego pride is making you make this decision that is going to result in people being more angry. But I guess you can say, hey, I won that round. And it's like for me, it's like I don't really think anyone won this round. Me and my sisters are now hungry, and we miss going to the movies because y'all were arguing all evening. So I've just always just been intrigued by human behavior.
So mainly just it's all about picking your battles. But
Yeah, I should like to literally just say I would say, and I would say this, like strategists need to be curious, but I would say anyone working in advertising, like it is a business that changes so rapidly, that I feel like people who don't have a curiosity to them like fall behind, because it's like literally like you could say, like I think about like something like TikTok. It's like a few years ago it was Musically, and it barely existed, and now it's like the biggest app in the world. And I remember like being on it from a Musically standpoint, literally just to see what my niece was doing on it. It's like, so it's like I have a nephew who is 20, but I have two nieces. I have twin niece and nephews who are 13. So it's like watching how they interact online from a safety standpoint, but also just like, I may not be targeting this group right now with the business that I'm working on, but I'm just curious, like how they use it. So for me, like I've just always been so intrigued by individuals and groups and how they either succeed or fail in life.
Makes sense. So before we pivot, because I do want to make sure that you have time to tell us about DE&I, can you explain brand strategy for people who may not understand it, but are like, it sounds interesting, but Google isn't giving what it needs to give?
I don't think Google is going to give what it needs to give. So I guess I show like a how my job is. Like you have brand strategy, you have people who do like channel strategy. So like you have a person who purely focuses on how best to utilize Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or Twitter. And I show like, so right now, a lot of the work I'm doing is I'm doing a lot of research from a social standpoint to understand what brands are doing. And I'm also doing a lot of work from like working on like the Hummer EV. I'm doing a lot of work on understanding on what's going on from an EV standpoint, how people are reacting to the Hummer. So like from a brand strategy standpoint, it's like you are trying to ensure that whatever, so like your whatever that voice is of your brand, you're trying whatever work, whatever partners you're looking at, like you want consistency across the board. So it's like when people think of Buick GMC, I want to be able to go and ask 10 people about that brand and get very consistent messages on what Buick or GMC means to them when they see it. When I think of like brands like Apple, same thing. It was like where like there's a lot of things that you can do with your brand, but like does it fit within that within the core of that brand's voice? So like I think like I try to think like what is a typical day for me. So it's like it's hearing, let's say when creative brings something to us. Like we're trying to make sure that it fits to the core of that voice of the business. It could be a super creative concept that they're presenting to us. But it's like, yeah, but that doesn't fit with our audience. Like that, this is really dope, but this isn't our audience. So it's like always trying to make sure that everything is centered around like that brand's voice. Like whatever you're doing, from events to how you're talking on social media, how you're engaging with people on social media, how your TV commercials, or the way that when I walk into your auto dealership, or the way I walk into your Apple store, it's like the message always feels the same. So it's like if I'm texting Apple, I feel that I'm getting engagement the same way there is I'm getting engagement in the store, or it feels very similar. So obviously they're different channels, but it's like the person, I want to call Apple people fake, because I love Apple products. I love the way that they engage in the store. That is like they have like the brand voice, like, hey, how can I help you? Where it's like I think about going into other stores where it's like you could walk around and may not get attention for like 10 minutes. Where it's like, if you walk into an Apple store, they're going to greet you immediately, ask you what brings you in today. I'm looking for a computer. Okay, what type of computer? What are you trying to do with your computer? Is it for business or personal? So it's like always this consistency. And this doesn't happen by mistake. It happens by either that brand or their agency like literally mapping everything out. So it's like if you're looking from a store standpoint, I'm just going to use like since I'm working on auto, like, all right, I'm going into this dealership. I saw this car online. It's like everything should be consistent across the board. So I think like from a brand strategy standpoint, it's like trying to create consistency in that message and then every touch point that you're engaging with that product. So if it's when you're going to the dealership to test drive the car, when you're online, when I see the ad on TV, when I engage with you on social media, like it should be consistency across the board where it doesn't feel like I'm engaging with two different companies. So it's like when you're like, I'm trying to relate it to like a human level. Like if I were to like, I guess like from a company standpoint, it's like there may be things that you want to do as an individual, but it's like when I was running my business, we were selling to an audience, we were selling what we were as that business. So it's like we were always on the same page. It wasn't like, oh, I think we should do this cool ad campaign, whereas my other business partner would say, oh, I think we should do something that's like more automated where we don't really have to do any work. And I think like from a business standpoint, like when I ran my business, I was definitely more on the creative side. My one partner was definitely more on the technical side. So it's like we had to find like what is our brand voice going to be? Are we selling technology or are we selling creativity? And we leaned towards like we went more towards selling the technology side of things. Like, okay, we can automate this for you, we can make this faster, more efficient for you. And even though like I was always like, oh, I just want to do this amazing campaign that's going to help us win some awards. It's like, okay, we decided as a brand that our focus is going to be on, we're going to do good work, but we're really focused on creating efficiencies from a digital standpoint for these brands.
That makes sense. So, for listeners who may not be familiar with MGP and your role in championing us and making sure that we got not only a seat at the table but a voice, I wanted to make sure that we talk a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion in this podcast. And I also was curious, like, which of those three pillars is most important to you? Because you're very vocal on social. That a seat at the table is not enough. It's very clear that it's not enough to check the box. It's not enough to say, oh, I got some brown people, I got some women, or I got some differently able people at the table. That's clearly not enough, and you call people to that. So I want to know, what was it that made you start calling people on that? Has that always been, a pillar of your corporate identity, or did that come across later? And then which of those three? Go ahead. I was going to also ask him, which of those three are you like, nah, this is the one. It's not just diversity, it's not just equity. Like, which of those three are you like, if I can only champion one, which is it?
So I would start off my curiosity is, I would say, is what has made me be vocal. Um, I've been blessed and put in a unique position where I hear about how hard it is. So I feel like getting jobs in advertising in general is hard, regardless of what color you are. It's much harder for people of color. But I would say for me, it was never really hard because it's like I built some amazing relationships that opened doors for me. And once those doors was open, I took off, was never allowing those doors to close. But I also noticed once I got in that the people that were coming behind me did not look like me. The people in front of me did not look like me. And that was an issue for me. And I was like, I'm being a curious person, but it's like I'm just naturally a helper. Like as I talked about earlier, like where it's like I see people going down this train on this train wreck. Before I would always try and help people. And then it was like realizing like, okay, you can't help everyone. But it's like in situations like what it was like from a DEI advertising standpoint, I'm trying to help every person of color participate in what I think is an amazing industry. So where it's like I don't as much as I talk about the part from a DEI standpoint that just absolutely annoys me, I still believe it is it's like you get the opportunity to create, you get the opportunity to make people laugh, you get the opportunity to make people happy, to buy amazing products. Like there's just few places you get that opportunity like to create emotion in people. So I would say as soon as I realized I didn't like being in college. So it's like it's like I went to a college in the city of Detroit, but it was still like largely a white institution. Like there were probably more Black people there than other colleges. But it was like still being in class. Like when I ran my ad group, there were like out of 150 people, I think there were maybe 10 who were like people of color. Because like I remember like when I eventually started getting more people of color to join, like I had to literally create a plan on how I'm going to get these people to join the organization where they walk into a room and there's 100 white people in there and there's only 10. So it's like having to like really engage with like the Black groups on campus, the Latino groups on campus, and so forth. So it's like I saw this early on as like, wow, this is just an industry where people of color just don't see any hope for themselves in it. So like they take their creative talent somewhere else. And like this, I would say like which out of the three is important. I've never really thought about it like that. I definitely know companies think about it like that. Like they will try to jump over the diverse part and just say, well, we just want to be inclusive. So it's like, okay, we're going to be inclusive. We're going to hire more women. And then you walk in the room and instead of it being, I don't know, 10 white men, one Black person, one Latino person, and one Black woman, and let's say 4 white women, now you walk in the room and it's just 20 white women. So it's like, now we're being more inclusive. Like we hired 16 more women. It's like, yeah, but they're all white women. It's like, but we hired 16 more women. So for me, I said they're all important. Like I can't, because I think from the standpoint, it's like I can hire more people of color into the company, but if I'm not listening to their voice, making them feel like they're truly a part of the company, that's where you get retention issues. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to hire in 25 people of color this summer, and I'm going to put them on the worst piece of business under the manager who everyone knows is horrible, or I'm not going to fire the manager who everyone has a problem with. Like either the people who are white and work under this white manager talk about how horrible he is, and then you have the people of color who are like, this manager embraces. But it's like, you know what? But this manager makes us a lot of money, so I'm going to keep him on staff. And so it's like for me, like all three matter. Like I feel like if you're not investing in all those areas, it doesn't matter how many people of color you hire, because like they're going to see the other diverse people around them, but it's going to be like, yeah, but you never empower us to do anything. You don't you still operates in your silo. So it's like, yeah, you hired 20 Black people, 20 Latino people, but you don't invite us out. Like I always like people. I think of some of my white friends where I'm pretty sure like I'm probably like their only Black friend. And I remember like one of the agencies that I worked at in the past, I remember like asking someone, I was like, dude, like I was like, you guys invite me to like your lunches on the weekends, your barbecues. Like, why don't you invite some of the other people on the team? And I was like, well, I don't really know them. I was like, well, you didn't really know me. We just started chatting. They was like, well, they don't really talk. I was like, do you ever go up and talk to them? They was like, well, I don't think they want to talk to me. I was like, so did you think I wanted to talk to you? So it's like this fear of, I was like, you created this system of where you hire in minorities and they don't feel part of your company. Like that is literally a job to them. It doesn't feel like a career. So it's like you don't invite them to lunch, you don't invite them to the barbecues that you're having or your baby shower or your bridal shower. So it's like you're never able to build this relationship and like truly understand them as a person. So it's like for me, it's all three of them. Like I feel like if you're missing any of them, like you're failing as a business, you're failing as an organization. Because I don't feel like you're setting up those people who tr- think you're champion to win. So like like if you focus on the inclusive part, then you're thinking about, well, we have to be fair to everyone. It's like, no, you don't. Like being is like the system has been so unfair that being fair to everyone means that the people who are so far ahead will continue being far ahead, and the people being so far back are to continue being far back. It's like you have to be intentional about it sometimes. Where it's like, you know what, I'm going to intentionally hire 30 people of color this summer. Like this, we're going to go out of our way to connect with diverse groups in advertising and marketing to find this diverse talent. And if we find this group, we're going to hire every single person. Like we're not going to create barriers for them to hire. So it's like then from the diversity standpoint, it's like, okay, we need to get more diverse. But it's like you have groups that will and agencies love doing this. Like there's like it's hard for them to like the problem is right in front of them. You don't hire Black and brown people. But it's gonna be like, well, we really want to let's just hire every diverse group out there. So it's like we're going to any group that can put the word diverse behind them, we're going to hire them. Then you walk through the business, it's like, wow, you didn't really hire you didn't hire any Black people at all. It was like we're more diverse. It's like, this isn't what we were talking about. It's like we were talking about like being intentional about hiring Black people, Latino people. It's like, but you decided that I'm going to go and hire every diverse group under the sun, except for the ones that we are truly under indexing in. I think it's like from the being intentional about things. So I think all three of them matter. Like I feel like you can't succeed in that arena without putting like you may not put equal energy into all three, but you have to put energy into all three and realize that they relate to each other.
Definitely. It sounds like, yes, we're going to bring the people in, we're going to make it diverse, we're going to make it inclusive, and we're being heavy on the equity to make sure they stay. But when you have these conversations with people and you say we have to go out of our way to hire XYZ number of people of color, specifically Black and brown people, and you have the conversation of if we keep going in the way that we're going and we're fair to everyone, then things remain the same. Do you run into people feeling like they're losing something? Like, is that the opposition? Because I would imagine if you're in a seat of power, you feel like you have to give up some power to let somebody else into your space.
And I feel like that is part of the big reason why we don't see change. Like people do not, there's like this fear of I'm losing power. Like for example, so I'm a big NASCAR fan. And yesterday was the Daytona 500. And I'm reading posts on like the NASCAR page. There was like 4 African American teams yesterday. So it was like Michael Jordan, who are some of the other people? But there's 4 teams owned by African, like Michael Jordan, Floyd Mayweather. I can't remember. They're like 4 African American teams that all started in Daytona 500 yesterday. So it's like NASCAR Facebook page, like they're promoting it across their social media. I see this one post where this one comment says, "I just like they're just being too woke. I'm gonna have to leave NASCAR." So he said they're really trying to just cram all of this wokeness down our throat. So I replied to him. I like, so that you want them to like, so were you looking for them like to really just like cram all the like the white race car drivers down your throat, whatever? And it's like,
Yeah.
it's like looking at it from his side. It was like they never talk about. But they really, this is like, I was like, I've been a NASCAR fan all my life. I've been to many races, and it has always annoyed me the lack of diversity there. It's like it's like you would see people of color there, but you never saw them in leadership. And something that I think NASCAR is doing pretty well is like they're being intentional about putting people in roles of leadership that is not just DEI roles. I think like in 2020 when they said you can no longer bring like Confederate flags to the racetrack. So it's like I think some just is like I think NASCAR is like, you know what, we're going to lose some people. Like they're not naive to the fact that there are people who just going like, yep, I'm not doing this. And for me, I don't even beat around the bush. I was like, no, there's a lot of racist people out there who hide under I want to be fair. It was like, no, you just don't like people of color. Like I'm not even going to sugarcoat this for you because I feel like our industry has sugarcoated. We can't find people when it's really just like, no, I just don't want Black people on my team. Like this is like, I see all these people of color resumes coming, but I don't really feel comfortable working with Black people or brown people. So it's like, I'm not going to hire these people. But then when you go into like the larger meetings, it's like, well, we can't find them. We really got to figure out like the best way to put them on the team. It's like coming up with like a million reasons not to hire people. So I think like those uncomfortable conversations with like leaders, I think some are fully open to losing power because they're not power hungry. They see it as we're going to bring this diverse talent in, and it's going to make our business so much better that our company is going to become more powerful. We're going to make more money. I'm going to make more money. I'm going to get bigger bonuses. So I don't have this fear. Like I don't care about losing power. It's like I don't know what's going to look like on the other side of the coin, but I know I see all these talented individuals on Black Twitter, on TikTok. I see how this, like, I think like one of my good friends is this Mexican general. It's like, I see how they're driving culture from this standpoint. It's like, I want those people on my team because it's like, I see where the world is going. I know what clients are either asking for or eventually going to ask for. So it's like, if I have these people on my team and we're sitting in meetings, I can have like I feel comfortable talking about, yes, we can do this for your business because we have this amazing team of diverse individuals from all sorts of backgrounds who understand the challenges that you're facing. I think the ones who are fearful of losing power are going to run into a brick wall eventually and going to just find themselves on the sideline wondering what happened. Because I look at like 2020 and I feel like things are moving quickly. Companies who promise things in 2020, some are delivering, most are not. But it's like people are checking, like, hey, you said you're going to do this. Like, what's happening? So it's like the brands are being forced to change. Like I think about like I have like my twin niece and nephew. They are people who they don't allow brands to be good and bad. It isn't like, oh, we know everyone does good things and bad things. It's like, well, humans do good things and bad things, but like you as a brand, if you're doing something bad to a community, I'm not going to associate with you at all. Where it's like, I'm good. Like I go find something else. Like I don't care if your food was amazing or your shoes were amazing. I'm going to find something else to associate with. Where I think we're like previous generations, where it's like, well, this sucks, but I really like their product, so I may not buy them for a few months, but I'm eventually going. The NFL is a prime example, where it's like people is like, oh, we're going to boycott this from the standpoint of you had your people who thought Colin Kaepernick was being anti-American, but then on the other side, you're just like, well, these owners are not supporting Colin Kaepernick. I'm not going to support the NFL. And it's like you had all these people saying they were going to boycott. And then when you look at the NFL ratings, it's like, oh, their ratings are higher than ever. So someone is lying. Like you people are saying you're boycotting. You may not be watching these games together anymore, but someone is lying because these numbers are going up. And America, like the population is not increased enough for these numbers to be at the levels they are. It's like, so it's like, but when I think of like my niece and my nephew generation, it was like, no, we would legit boycott stuff and never touch your product ever again.
So we do a lot of asking, excuse me, of brands. Like we ask companies for things, we ask brands of things. But as someone who brought in at least 8 very new people into the ad space, we're excited to work in the industry. I think some of us want to work on the agency side, some of us on the client side, some of us will start our own agencies. What would your ask be for young talent? What would your ask be for young talent? So we ask things of brands, but what would your ask be for us as we enter the space? What would you ask that we be mindful of as we enter the space?
I think the curiosity thing. I think like understanding that you are going to have challenges, that every time someone, I think it's people of color, and I think this is like a tricky road that we walk down, that understanding that every time something doesn't go your way at work, that is not always race. And that sometimes I'm not going to act like that isn't like part of the scenario. But I feel like it's like when we walk into stores and that person is following you, and it's like, oh my God, here we go again. But it may just be like, no, this person really cares about their customers and they really want to help you and they want to make sure that you have what you have, what you're looking for. So I would say like really be curious, like try to soak in as much information as you can. Never be afraid to ask for something that you want or like you don't understand. That's something that I've noticed with a number of young people in the industry is that it's like you come from, I use like this project, for example. So it's like, come from doing the Marcus Graham project, or you come from like an amazing internship, and then you go into a full-time role, and like the amount of freedom that you have right now, it's just like, it just evaporates. It's just like gone. Like now you're into a system where it's like, oh, I was sitting in a room pitching to these senior level clients. Now I'm printing out stuff for my manager to present to the senior level client, and I get no engagement with that senior level client. I think about something else. So yeah, be curious, ask questions all the time. Make sure that people, whoever you're working for, know that you're a dependable individual. I feel like that sets you up for promotions early. It sets you up for opportunities to get in front of senior level clients. Like, if I feel like it's something like your dependability is something that you can lose quickly. Also, I would say like don't be afraid to change jobs. Like if you feel like something is not working for you, don't stick it out. Like I feel like some people end up with this fear like, oh, I can't jump jobs. Like, yes, you can, because you end up running into those walls where you end up having like mental breakdowns where it is like, oh, I just want to stay here and try and work it out. I feel like that moment that your gut is telling you is like, yeah, this is not going to work for me. Like I thought this was going to be great, but it's probably time for me to start looking for something else. And I would say like if you're looking for jobs, like really try to look for the things that interest you from the standpoint of the type of products or services you want to work on, the culture that you want from a job standpoint. Like sure, there's some things that you may have to sacrifice on, but like truly like make a checklist of like what is important to you and go out there and try and find jobs. Like I saw someone post on Twitter yesterday saying, when you apply for jobs and it asks for your race, do you check that box? And there's one person like, no, I don't check that box. And then someone else said like, that's why I don't put my picture on LinkedIn. I was like, well, like I know right off the back, if I don't see a person with a photo on LinkedIn that they're a person of color. or they're like a really old person. So it's like, but I'm leaning towards they're a person of color. Same thing like from a race standpoint. I remember like when we were hiring people and looking at some of the resumes, or not just the resume, like the applications. And like I knew immediately, like if a person did not, well, I would say I assumed that if this person did not check the box where it asks about their race, that they were probably a person of color. And my mindset is, regardless, like if you're applying for a company that isn't a fan of people of color, it doesn't matter if you have your photo there or not. Like when they find out you're that person of color, they're not going, like, you don't want to work at a place that you have to hide who you are. Like you may say, oh, I tricked them, I got in, and it was like, oh no, you didn't trick us. Like I see that you're black, and I'm gonna treat you just like I treated all the other black people. So I would say, like, find places where like you can truly be yourself. There are enough companies out there that you can find someone that you're going to truly be able to be who you are in a job place, where you're not having to, where you feel comfortable talking to your manager, your boss, your colleagues about who you are. Like you're not hiding anything. Sure, there's things that you want to keep private, but it's like, am I comfortable calling my manager, telling them I'm having a tough time? Or it's like, or am I going through things in life that are affecting my work? It's like, or do I feel like I can talk to my manager about, hey, like we were in that meeting today and we were talking about X, Y, and Z. This is why we really need to hire more people of color on our team. So it's like a place where you truly know that you can be yourself. I feel like look for those things where it's like, don't just chase the job. There's just so many opportunities out there that you will find the one that is either perfect for you or almost perfect for you.
Thank you so much, Chioke. That's our time. We really appreciate you for being here.
It's appreciated, man.
It's an honor. Thank you.
All the valuable information.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. To our listeners, we'll be back next week.
Add it up till we got to the sum. Stayed in the rhythm, now we on the drum. Nova mentality, you see how we coming. Real talk on it, we keep it 100. Dreams money can't buy, and that's all that we wanted. Wait, now we see what we needed. Putting that work till this mission completed. We feeling blessed, we thought we was depleted. Real life winners, we can't be defeated. Stay by our side like we on the drum line. Know that things gon' be hard sometimes. It's a new day, check the forecast. Perfect day for the drum podcast.